Good evening. This is very exciting. I haven't personally been at this podium for 2+ years, so I think we should just all give ourselves a round of applause. So exciting. So good evening. I'm Jennifer Raab and have the incredible privilege of being the president of this extraordinary institution, Hunter College, where the American dream still comes true. So I'm so excited to welcome those of us here back in person at Roosevelt House, and also hello to everybody out there on Zoom. This is a very special event tonight with two very special women as Hunter kicks off our celebration of Women's History Month. And what better place to honor women achievers than here at Hunter College, which was only the 9th school in the United States to be opened for women. So the 9th women's college in the United States, established in 1870 by our visionary founder, Thomas Hunter. Thomas Hunter created a public college not only as a place where women entering the teaching profession could get true academic training, which was an incredibly progressive idea in the 1870s, but also as a school that was open to women of all races, religions, nationalities, and income levels, another visionary concept. Hunter has been living up to his ideals ever since the 1870s, producing a long line of incredibly impactful women entrepreneurs, authors, scholars, educators, scientists, and more. Among our graduates, we count Pauli Murray, who is finally being recognized as one of the bravest and most forceful civil rights leaders in the years before the civil rights movement even took off. We're equally proud of the great Bella Abzug, the congresswoman, that fearless fighter for equal rights, who gave us one of the greatest campaign slogans of all times when she ran for Congress and said, "A woman's place is in the House of Representatives." Yet another Hunter alumni champion for equal rights was the beloved poet, author, and civil rights leader, Audre Lorde. So great has Audre Lorde's impact been that the New York City Council has named the intersection of Lexington Avenue and 68th Street our crossroads in her honor, and Hunter will be celebrating that naming very soon, and we hope you'll all join us. And in the sciences, we are immensely proud to say Hunter is the only college in the world, to graduate 2 women winners of the Nobel Prize in Medicine, Gertrude Elion and Rosalind Yalow. It's especially appropriate that we are here tonight, gathered for this event in one of Hunter's crown jewels, the Roosevelt House. This was, of course, the New York home of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt for 25 years before they moved into the White House. It served as FDR's transition headquarters after he was elected president, and it was here where he appointed the first woman cabinet secretary in United States history, Frances Perkins. It was here, too, that Eleanor Roosevelt began her career in public life and went on to become one of the greatest women in American history, a role model for women at a time when very few existed. Among her many talents, Eleanor was a master of memorable sayings. One of my favorite goes, "A woman is like a tea bag. You can't tell how strong she is until you put her in hot water." That is the buoyant spirit that presides over tonight's gathering. All of us at Hunter actually considered this a welcome home party because Xochitl Gonzalez has come back to us. She was our assistant vice president for alumni relations before she decided to follow this crazy dream of becoming a novelist. She packed her bag, she took off for Iowa Writer's Workshop with a Zabar care package from Hunter, because of course, Judy Zabar went to Hunter. And now we're actually not at all surprised. It's just no surprise that she's back again here at Roosevelt House as a New York Times best-selling author who's in talks with Hulu to turn her brilliant novel, Olga Dies Dreaming, into a series. All of this in her 40s, which gives you an idea of what a great act of courage it was to give up a successful career that she had in New York to pursue this dream. And what a triumph she's achieved. Xochitl actually didn't attend Hunter, although we like to pretend. But we love her so much, and she's so much a part of our life, and we're so proud of her that we consider her a true Hunter girl. And we have a saying, you can always tell a Hunter girl, but you can't tell her much. Xochitl's novel tells the story of a generational conflict within a Puerto Rican family set in the context of the contemporary New York Puerto Rican world, with a devastating storm headed everyone's way, both literally and figuratively. The reception for this wonderful book has been phenomenal. The Washington Post review uses terms like powerfully and delightfully, and the Los Angeles Times calls it the sharpest and best written social comedy in a long time. Here tonight to discuss this marvelous work with Xochitl is another member of the Hunter family we are so proud of, Dr. Yarimar Bonilla. Yarimar is the perfect choice to lead this conversation this evening. She's a professor of political anthropology at Hunter in the Graduate Center and is the first woman director of El Centro, Hunter's renowned Center for Puerto Rican Studies. Even in the relatively short time she's been there, Yarimar has made so many important and innovative changes in Centro's operations and has embraced the outreach into our city's Puerto Rican community and way beyond. She too has just published a book, one that she co-edited, called Aftershocks of the Disaster. It is about Hurricane Maria, the devastating storm that struck Puerto Rico in 2017, the same hurricane that plays such a key role in Xochitl's novel. Given Yarimar's deep knowledge of Puerto Rican history and politics, and given the wonderful cast of characters Xochitl has created, from a mother who years ago left her children to join the Young Lords, to a congressman from Brooklyn who's being arm-twisted, to a wedding planner for Manhattan high rollers, maybe based on the author herself. This is going to be, I know, a fascinating conversation. So it is with great pride and love and joy that I welcome and introduce two women that have and will continue to add to women's history, two women who inspire our Hunter students, and two women who exemplify the Hunter motto and their impact on creating a more just society. That motto, mihi cura futuri, the care of the future is mine. Both of you, Professor Yarimar Bonilla and our own best-selling author, Xochitl Gonzales, live that Hunter motto. So please join me now in welcoming these two extraordinary women, Xochitl Gonzales and Professor Yarimar Bonilla.
Thank you. That was so beautiful. And thank you, Yarimar. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you for this book. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you, and I'm just so excited that this book exists. If whoever hasn't read it, please go get your copy right after this, so she can sign it for you. So let's start with Olga. Like how did Olga come to be? Where was the idea for this book born?
Yeah, it started out with her, and I didn't intend to have her be a wedding planner, which I had been at one point, but I for a long, long time actually. But I sort of was writing the same like short stories about the same character who was like kind of living in a gentrified version of her hometown and her life, right? Like, she, in one version she works at an auction house, in another version she works at a college, and then finally I was like, it's the same girl, it's like I'm like, she's the same kind of petty bitchy girl. And so I was like, oh, and I realized like I'm just gonna make her a wedding planner, because then you can talk about all of this fun stuff that you see, like, because when you're a wedding planner, it's like the clients are important, but so is the minimum wage shuttle bus driver, because everybody, that's where it all goes to die. Right? Like, it's like, and I was like, that'll be a good way to talk about what I think is kind of happening in New York, and also just sort of about class and service. And I knew I was going to go and get my M.F.A. I didn't know where yet, actually, at this point, but I was trying to think about what I wanted the book to be about. And I knew I really wanted to talk about Puerto Rico, and particularly the kind of colonial struggles that were going on. At that point, Maria had happened, but I had already been kind of following Promesa, and just, it felt so inevitable what I was seeing with Maria, because if you had been following Promesa, and then I was supposed to spend my 40th birthday there, and it hit smack dab in between Irma and Maria. And I remember calling the hotel, and they're like, we're never going to have power by the time you're supposed to be. It was such like a matter of factness that it was like, okay. And so obviously, like, I was sort of watching it with a different eye, and then watching it fade out of the news. And I ended up on my way to Hunter, actually. I was on my way to Hunter, and I was reading Naomi Klein's The Battle for Paradise. And I was listening to Hooray for the Riffraff, and she was a former New Yorican who moved down to she kind of got priced out of her, being an artist and moved down to New Orleans, and the whole album is sort of a conceptual album about gentrification in the city, and then seeing it was like I felt like I saw the two things click, and the original idea was like Robin Hood wedding planner robs from rich clients to help rebuild her mother rebuild Puerto Rico after Maria. And so obviously it evolved from that, but that was kind of the genesis. I knew I didn't want to write a book and just have it be about one woman walking through New York. I didn't want to write just like Puerto Rican Sex in the City, so to speak. Like, even though I like Sex in the City, but like, like I wanted it to have a little bit more meat on the bone. Yeah.
Well, I think to me that makes sense. I feel like the Puerto Rican Sex in the City involves like talking about Le Promesa over Manhattan or whatever.
Exactly.
Cosmopolitans. and I have to say, like, I've never read a book like this before in the way of how it combines steamy romance, because the romance is steamy. And then it combines like political intrigue and all of that with also like family drama and also a lot of kind of fantastical elements that I don't want to reveal for no spoilers, right? How and at times I'm like, people are into like non-Puerto Ricans, they want to read this book about Le Promesa.
I can't believe it either. It's weird because like I wrote it largely frustrated by the fact that like there wasn't a large Latino population when I was in college, but there was a population, and we had all stayed in touch, and everybody was pretty, successful in doing their own things, and their lives were complicated. Not even just Puerto Ricanas, like just Latinas. Their lives were complicated by all the professional things, and then the family things that just sort of are these obligations that a lot of first gen or cultural people have, and then the pull of politics, as it relates to their existence. And I just felt like I hadn't been seeing that person that had been not on their heels but on their toes, like in life, but then being faced with challenges. And so I felt a compelling need to sort of show the women that I knew, like the versions of the women that I knew, who had been through a lot, but then keep moving forward. And I wanted to do that. And so I think it's a crazy book. Like, I'm always like, it's kind of a crazy book, but I don't know that it's any crazier than like life can be sometimes. Like, if you're grappling with a lot of things and you're dealing with a tragedy of home, or you're dealing with a pull of home, and then a parent is sick or is incapacitated or has like a need, or a sibling has a need. And I think I just wanted to sort of show a journey through the life of a woman like that, and then obviously and through her brother. So I mean, I wrote it really for Puerto Ricanas and Latinas, but I definitely felt like I was like, if there's a way that I can Trojan horse this idea of a wedding planner meeting a hoarder, like, and having a one-night stand into people caring about Promesa and the fact that we have a colony, like, I'm gonna try it. Like, I was like, let me see if we can try it. And the worst that'll happen is it doesn't work out. And I remember writing this one scene, and I was like, are people gonna buy this? And I was like, I buy it. And I think the thing about it was like, I'd been on a lot of like boards and things, like I always say, like when you are Latina and look like me, you get invited to do everything, because like you check a box, and also people like feel really comfortable. And so I had heard a lot of what people say when they think nobody's listening, and I made the dialogue, I think, very believable. Like I at least some of the scenes, I was like, oh, people kind of do say things like that. Like, and so I felt like the believability that they were based in real people, even when even the villains are kind of based sometimes on totally well-meaning people. Like, it's I think that it let me get away with doing a lot more crazy stuff as it goes, and it's a fever dream. Like, you kind of start one way and it just like yeah.
And then you wake up at the end, you're like, what just happened?
Exactly. But it's amazing. Sometimes I'm like, really, are people going to get into it? And it has been amazing to me, like the notes and the letters I've gotten from people with no personal tie to the story, that I'm like, oh wow, that's like, but it's cool. I think it's such a, we used to have this with our business. We were very specific. Like, we catered to very wealthy hipsters. And I always said like niche worked for us. And I think like niche works for this book. Like, it's not even just New York, and it's so South Brooklyn, like it's so like, it's like, I think in like making it more specific, it's somehow tapped into something that people have been seeing in themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it's such a clearly Puerto Rican, but really diaspora Rican
Yes.
book, right? And
Yes.
and it's been that's part of what's been such a pleasure for me to read it, right? And I wanted to know a little bit more about how you approached, how did you decide to write from that position?
Yeah.
Because you're half Puerto Rican, half Mexican, you're a Brooklynite, you're a
Yeah.
wedding planner, you have all these different, positions that you could have anchored the book in. But I think it's very much a Puerto Rican centric book. So
Yeah.
how did you come to decide to write from that space?
Well, I think for me, the dismantling of kind of the New Rican cultural spaces is a tragedy of gentrification. And I felt like it was an identity. I don't know how to put it. It's like growing up, like you didn't even need to explain to anybody of any background. You're like, oh, I was like, I'm Puerto Rican. Like it's like they kind of understood what that was about, and it was sort of has like become like extinct. It's going extinct in New York. Like where Center is, like you still have it, but even there you see gentrification and in Sunset Park it's still a Latino neighborhood mainly, but like it's there's been such a second diaspora of sorts, right? And
Everywhere it's like, oh, that used to be really Puerto Rican.
yeah, exactly. And I think like to me, growing up, like because I spent most of my time here on that with that side of the family, that was like what I knew, and I wanted to pay homage to that, but I also wanted to pay homage to the idea of a place and a culture kind of fleeting away and getting eroded. And what I definitely knew, and I was really like over obsessively sensitive about, is like I did not want to write about Maria from the perspective of like being on the island. Like I felt like that was something I didn't know, and I think I wanted to kind of talk about this like knowing and not knowingness of a place and the pain of that, and like not. I don't know. It's a strange thing to feel like you know something, but then you're insecure that you're not it enough. Like I think in some weird ways, maybe I wrote the book because I felt insecure about not being Puerto Rican enough, and like I was like this felt like a way in that I felt like I had enough comfort with that I could do it, and it was like a love letter to my hometown and to my culture, like and but also it just to me felt like a perfect parallel because you're seeing kind of hyper gentrification in disaster capitalism happening in Puerto Rico, and then you're sort of seeing the same thing happen in Brooklyn, and I just thought that they made two sort of pretty sad but pretty parallels to each other. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that first of all, no Puerto Rican feels sufficiently Puerto Rican.
I know we talked
Yeah,
about this once before. It's
the
really
thing.
weird.
Yeah, I don't know because we're colonized, what it is.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
everyone's like, well, I have a very particular experience, or and I have so many friends in the creative world or in the academic world, and then even myself, who just we feel like, wow, who am I to like speak for the Puerto Rican experience? And but I think that also comes from the lack of narratives about us. That anything we put out there feels like it's filling this huge void and can't just be one among a million things out there.
Yeah, what was freeing for me, actually, just when you were saying that, I thought about, I think having a lot of characters made that freeing for me because I was able to let Olga sort of be like, I don't want to say tepid, but like, I don't think she felt defined by that. It was something, not anything she would deny, but I don't think she ever felt defined by it. And I think then you kind of got her brother, and you could have her brother, and then you could have like Mabel be like much more like casual, and you could have somebody like Reggie, and and I think like across the board, it enabled you. And I got excited about that once I started doing it because I was like, oh, I was like, this is true, like this is actually real. And I think too often we feel like we have to tell one story, and then we're kind of limiting ourselves, and it becomes like, well, this is what it is. And yeah, and so I felt like the large ensembleness of the world like enabled me to feel more comfortable with that. And I think probably because I did kind of make her a little bit more like me, where she's like, what I feel most is like I feel very Brooklyn, like, but this is where my background is. And then she kind of, it surprises her when she has this like emotional reaction watching Maria, like, and I think kind of coming to that. And so maybe that being the main POV made me feel a little bit more free. And then it was almost just like recreating like people that I've known and loved, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, now that you say that, I think I understand because I've been thinking how. I mean, it's a big book, but still, I'm like, how did she get so many things in here? And I think it is because there's so many characters that then that are really fleshed out. Each of these characters and that have chapters in their own voices and all of that. That I think that helps to kind of give this kind of complexity of experience while also kind of a deep dive into each of them. So that's really lovely. I have to ask you about Blanca.
Yeah.
So
Everybody always wants to talk about
everyone
Blanca.
wants to talk
Blanca's the
about
mom.
Blanca, yes. Because when I started reading, I'm like, well, this is not a Puerto Rican mom, but it's a way of being a Puerto Rican mom, right? So tell us a little bit about Blanca.
It's been so interesting because I've gotten that, and then I've gotten just across the board people like, you really nailed the Caribbean mom. Like, like it's like, I think, she's a little bit. Originally, she was kind of based on my own mom in that she was an activist, and like I was raised by my grandparents, not one but both, like because my mom, that was like what my mother wanted to do, and this idea, I was always intrigued by the idea of like she did that, and I remember like at my Brown graduation, like she like read my thesis, she's like, this is bourgeois nonsense, like it was like it was like so unapologetic about it, and but she said that at graduation, right, and before I went, she was like, you could go to Brooklyn College and not have any debt, and it was like why are you doing this, like so she was very like, okay, she had gone to Brooklyn College, and and I think I sort of was like, I wanted to have this idea of like when you have two different value systems, because I did find that like a lot of the kids that I knew when I was in college were the children, some people were the children of people who fought for to be at that school themselves, and then their kids were kind of like not concerned with that at all and just sort of like, what party can I get into? Like, what club are we going to? And so I was intrigued by that but then the more I started thinking about her, I was like, I knew in every letter, I wanted her to be a little bit right and a little bit wrong. Do you know, like, and I think like I was real. I did a lot of research about activists in general, and like, just generally that, sometimes people can be very good at this, but not good at this. Like, and like the priority is like, this is much more important than that. And so what is it like to have that singular focus, but still not feel that you're not a parent, like still feel you're a parent, like you're not absconding it completely. And so the letters, I think that what's been fun or interesting is that I wrote them as letters to sort of represent the fact that it's like a one-way conversation. And I've been amazed by how many women have said to me, this is how I feel parented. Like it's a one-way conversation. There's no room to say back who I am. Like, and I feel like I have to be like this version of myself. So I've been surprised at how it's some very specific things. Like, and and I read a lot of like first-person accounts from women in the Young Lords, and what the value systems kind of were, and this idea of like, natural beauty and not valuing materialism, and and I think, and yet at the same time, so many of them had fallen in love and had been in relationships, and there was like a little bit of heteronormativity in the whole thing that I think ends up informing the mom a lot. So, I wanted to sort of also show that sort of change of ebb and flow of ideas. So she's a fascinating character. People are very like, she find her very polarizing. I've been also really interested though, because like boomer women really dig her. Yeah, like, because they're like, oh, she kind of, what else is she going to do? She had to get married. Like, like, yeah, she have kids. Like, it's like, and so that she's kind of is like, I'm not doing it. Like, like, it's like, I want to do my own thing. Like, there's like, some people see her as very, like, liberating. And, like, younger readers are like, she's a terrible mother. Like, it's
I like, maybe because I'm Gen X, I'm somewhere in
yeah,
between.
Exactly.
I had like a journey with Blanca. 'Cause at first I'm like, this doesn't resonate with me because my mom is like super nurturing,
Yeah.
and super just like, oh, you're amazing, you're so smart.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
sometimes I'm like, tone it down, But so at first I'm like, oh, I have no, I have no experience with a mother who's cold and distant and far away. But then there's a moment in the book when Prieto, he gets really
Yeah.
caught up in what he's doing.
Yes.
And he has to decide, well, I'm going to, I want to tend to my children. I want to make time for them. I'm going to have to make these hard choices. And then I'm
Yes.
like, oh, I get Blanca now.
Yeah.
She made hard choices.
Well, yeah, but I think it's so interesting. The other reason why I wrote her that way is because when I was doing my research kind of about the bigger picture of the book, I was, obviously Ojeda Rios came up a lot, and I was like, this guy went out into the hills, didn't see his kids for 15 years, sent them cassette tapes, like, hello, like, and I was like, and nobody ever talks about that. Like, nobody's like, what a bad dad. Like, it's like, no, everybody talks about like what he was fighting for, like the liberation of Puerto Rico and blah, blah, blah. And like, that he like was this like freedom fighter, and nobody talks about him being a bad dad. And I was like, I want to challenge people, because we say that we are, feminist, womanist, whatever. And then at the same time, like, we get very weird about mothers, like not doing mothering the way that we think they should. So I don't know, like in the beginning, I think I thought of her as like a bad character, and now I don't think of her that way at all. Like I've evolved. So I've saved so much money on therapy.
Well, I think there's an art. I mean, I think all of the characters really go through things, and who they are changes in the book. And I found that I went along with the journey with them. So I want to ask you, like, reading the book, to me it seemed like such an incredibly Puerto Rican book. How did you pitch this book to the white publishing world?
So the good thing is that in fiction, unlike nonfiction, it's just kind of done. Like it's complete by the time you go out with it. But my agent is an amazing agent. She can't be here tonight, unfortunately, but like she's an amazing agent, and I met her in a exercise locker room when we still took exercise classes at a bar class. And my friend works in publishing, who went to Hunter, my best childhood friend, and she was like, oh, she just got into Iowa, she's writing a book, blah, blah, blah. She was basically being a publicist, which is what she mainly does. And she's like, you should send me the first 100 pages. And she read the first 100 pages and completely believed in it. And she was like, I've known families like this, and I've never seen them in a book before. And just kind of rode with it. And so really kept encouraging me as I was like writing it and finishing it. And honestly, I can't tell. I think it happened at a good moment. Like it's like, it was after sort of all of the mishgas around American Dirt, and I think that people were very much like, we need to keep rethink this. And I think that helped. And I mean, there was an intense interest. Like it wasn't just my publisher. Like it was sort of, and one person was like, we should cut out all the Puerto Rico stuff and just make it a love story. And I was like, that is not my book. But other than that, I think that was 1 out of 10. And everyone else, one editor, there has been change. One editor called me. She was like a younger editor, and she was like, I'm not gonna get this auction. She was like, but I wanted to talk about the book. And then she started singing, Preciosa at the end of our meeting. And she's like so, it was like really beautiful. So I think that I didn't have a lot of pushback about the politics at all, which I think a lot of people are surprised about. And I think it's funny because now I just have noticed, even writing for The Atlantic or writing for anywhere, I'm not italicizing Spanish. I'm not doing this. I'm capitalizing black and brown. I think the good thing about doing things older is you sort of are much more, no, I'm not doing that. And you have your reasons. So then, if there is a little pushback, so I think most people are surprised by that. I think my agent thought people were going to want to get me to change the title, and nobody did. So, my publisher has been really tremendously supportive and excited, really excited about it. And they did such a wonderful job, even in the marketing. We were all over Sunset Park, and it just was really, I felt very collaborative, even with the cover and everything else. So, I was crazy. I was a crazy person. I was it has to be this shade of blue. It can't not be the shade of blue, because the blue in the flags means different things for independence or statehood. And so it was mainly more collaborative than I think people are surprised to hear. But I do think that there's a genuine effort in publishing to sort of have these stories be authentic and diverse. Yeah.
And in terms of the writing, how did you approach, writing about a kind of very specific, group in a way that people beyond that group would understand? And, a lot of BIPOC writers and journalists, they complain sometimes about having to do these explanatory, expositions of, rather than just saying, my mom was in the Young Lords, the characters in my mom's a young lord, comma, a paramilitary group.
I think I decided that if I thought there was stuff that other diasporicans wouldn't know, I would explain it. And if I thought it was something I'm not gonna explain what a dish is, I'm not gonna tell you what coquito is, I'm not gonna figure it out. One of my friend's moms, she was like, here's my vocabulary list that I learned while I was making which I thought was really cute. So I think if I thought it was a political concept that it's possible people didn't know, because our history is not taught. It's not taught. And I I can't get over how many people have reached out to say, like, I was raised, like, we were the only Puerto Rican family in a community, and I didn't know anything about my history, and, like, and now I'm learning, I bought all these books and blah, blah, blah. So I think I decided generally I would explain concepts that I was worried even people in our own community that wouldn't maybe know, but I wasn't going to explain, like, language or, like, cultural things, like, like just like basic cultural things. So I wasn't going to italicize Spanish if a person would think it in Spanish. Like, it's like, I think I only italicize when the real estate developers speak some Spanish at some point. So, like, that was sort of my decision, and that was like a Toni Morrison like thing where she's like, how are you going to eliminate the white gaze from the book? And I think I mainly did that. And if I explained concepts, it was just because I was worried that even people within the community might not necessarily get them, like, yeah. And it's shocking, like, the Young Lords, that was part of why I really wanted that lineage connection and why the title is what the title is, because we are sort of put in this position where because we're not taught history like this, just generally, even in civil rights history and activism history, we often get left out. It's like we feel like this fight has never been fought before except for us, and that can feel much more weary, or this generation, or this like group of college students, or whatever it might be. And I think it's important to see that you stand on shoulders and that this work has been done before, and there's a little bit of a roadmap for you to possibly follow and get inspired by.
I read some of the reviews on Goodreads and Amazon and stuff, and there were
oh my God, Goodreads, like.
Is that good or bad? I don't know. There's a lot of good ones on there.
Yeah, there's good ones. There's some good ones. There's also did not finish. Nothing happens for 100 pages. Like, not that I look.
Well, most of my writing doesn't get picked up by people reviewed in Goodreads. So
I appreciate that, girl.
But I noticed that there were a lot of people who were like, oh, I really enjoyed this book, and I learned so much about Puerto Rico, right? People who, because it's not taught in schools, and that's my bread and butter every day, so I won't get on that soapbox. But I thought it was really interesting how the book, on the one hand, is incredibly realist, like goes into like the details of promesa, of austerity, of what happened after the hurricane. But then it also is very fantastical in some of its imaginings.
Yeah.
So how did you weave that fact and fiction?
Yeah. I think I decided to give myself some liberty because honestly, I was at an event, like a rally around 2019, like a sort of I don't know what we would call them, like an empathy rally, like a mirror rally for everything that was happening in the summer of 2019 after the text messages were revealed. Yes, exactly. And there were these kids that were like there wearing these like bandanas and dressed in all black, and I was like, well, this is clearly not something that's being organized, and I just didn't know where. I'm like, I don't know where this is being organized, and then I would see photos in other places, and I could see that everybody was kind of dressed similarly and blah blah blah, and I was like, well, this is clearly something that's happening. And I think I just let my imagination go in some ways to a hopeful place, like, because I think the idea that I don't necessarily want to advocate for a violent revolution, but I think the idea that there are people that are like, I'm not going to just be unorganized. I'm going to figure that I'm going to commune and not just in the island, like in the diaspora, just kind of got my imagination going. And then I was taking a fantasy sci-fi class, and I remember being in the class, and I was the only person who never read any fantasy or sci-fi, and I was like, I'm just here because I'm sci-curious. And I was like, and then I ended up like kind of coming up with a bunch of things because of that class. And so he's so tired of me sending him thank you notes, by the way, the teacher who taught that class. Like, I'm like, one more, I was like, Kevin Brockmeyer, one more time, thank you. Like, but I think I decided that there's stuff we don't know that's happening. And I think it's not always covered by the media. And if I saw anything in all of this, that was like, there were things that you would only see on PBS or YouTube, like that were happening post-Maria, like in terms of communities helping each other and rebuilding. And so I was like, there's a lot of stuff we don't know. And I just sort of leaned into that and just let that go a little bit.
Well, it's interesting because the fantasy or fiction part, political fiction, is very plausible, though. Right?
That's how I felt.
So
yeah.
I to me, it reminded me of like this Glissantian notion of like prophetic histories and stuff, kind of building from what is, and and I don't want to give spoilers, but there's a big political movement that happens in the book, and it's interesting that some other works that are coming out post Maria, they're also in the literary realm. There's a lot of imagining of a kind of post Maria revolution.
Yes.
I don't know if it just speaks to a collective hope or desire, or if it's.
I think it also speaks to the idea that like when things are totally broken down, there's room for opportunity to reimagine, And I think, I don't know, I was just thinking about this in terms of like I'm hoping we come to some reimagining of like childcare, right? Like it's like I think we saw that was completely broken down during this pandemic, and it's like, can we rethink that? Like it's like so I think it comes from this idea of there are things that are deeply broken, and let's maybe come at it with a different approach. And so I feel like that I think is what we're seeing, like if not maybe the outcome that is being presented in fiction, it's like the idea of like inspiring a different take, And I also think it's because we did see so much activism on the island, like, and we did see suddenly like being like the federal government's not going to help us with this, like, and so I do think that it's also inspired just by the spirit of what was coming out generally, like that again, like these things are not always reported well on, but if you dig, you can find. So,
absolutely. So tell me, you're working on turning the book into a television show. What will the television show be like?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, hopefully we shot a pilot, but hopefully it will be equally as political. Like it's not going to shy away from politics, and I think it's more character driven, like and it's very Brooklyn, like it's very Brooklyn. I think like we have an amazing cast. I think what's cool is that like the book kind of exists, how do I put it? Now you're collaborative. Like the book is like my version, and now it's like collaborative. And so like, you sort of like what would this character really say? Is this dialogue like realistic? But I think it's actually pretty true to the book. It does like do some things, like it expands worlds a little bit. Like so you meet some characters way like before, like get more time with characters that then don't exist. Like you meet characters earlier than maybe you would, just so that you understand who you're playing with. But it's definitely like a family drama that's a dark comedy, really. Like it's a dark comedy, and like I think with political overtones. But it's been a blast to sort of work with the actors, I think, and just make these people real people, and see the diversity of the cast, like, but there's like fun stuff, like there's like Mabel has like a bridal shower that like never happens in the book, like, and like, so you get to see stuff, other sides of characters, like the wedding dress shopping, and like, like, and you get to see the family a little bit more, which is kind of cool.
And does the TV series take place before Maria, during,
it's literally the same timeline as the book, so it starts before, just maybe a little bit earlier, yeah.
And then takes us into
and then it would
post-Maria.
theoretically take us into Maria, but I think we'd have to figure out, we're still not quite sure how it would break into seasons, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
dying.
Let's
to
hope.
See it.
Fingers crossed. Yeah,
Let us
yeah.
know what we need to do.
I know.
to get it on our screens.
Yes.
And you're working on a new book now, right?
Yes, I am. I'm in the midst, and it is a fictional retelling of Ana Mendieta's life and after death, we woven with a campus story set in the 90s at an elite higher ed institution, like during the kind of period where it was sort of a segregated campus. So, and it sort of is about, it explores like power dynamics and access to history and connectivity and lineage. And I'm excited about it. Yeah, it's definitely turning out to be interesting. Yeah. I know. I'm very in my own head about it, but right now, so.
Well, and aside from your novels, you also have a newsletter. Tell us a little bit. Newsletters have made a comeback, right?
Newsletters totally made a comeback. Actually, it's a really great story in that I sent the book to a woman that had been a mentor to me, and I did not realize that her husband was Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic. But she read it, and then she was like, her daughters then read it, and then they were all talking about it, and he was annoyed that he was left out of the family conversation, basically. So he's like, I now need to read this book, and then was like, let's just get on a Zoom. And like, it turns out, well, literally within the first 3 minutes, I said, yeah, I was like, well, yesterday was my birthday, and he said, yesterday was my birthday, and I said, F you, Jeff Goldberg, like, because I'm from Brooklyn, and I can't stop myself from cursing. And then he was like, 10 minutes later, he's like, you should have a newsletter. Like, no, he was like, you should talk about gentrification and stuff, and like, things like that. So they were launching these newsletters, and it's been fun, and it's called Brooklyn Everywhere, and I mainly do talk about like different kinds of gentrification of like self and places, and just, like wrote about like Sex in the City and how like the new comeback was sort of like the version of like the kind of polished city that's a little bit soulless. And I've written about like, oh God, I wrote about rats. I shouldn't talk about it, but I get my best friend's like, you should have to stop talking about rats. But like I wrote, and I think this time I'm talking about feminism versus womanism this week. So I talk about a bunch of different things, but it's mainly around this idea of like change and holding on to things. And yeah, I'm sort of fixated on that. Yeah.
And what's the difference between having a newsletter and having a column?
It's subscriber based, so people have to opt in. Yeah.
Format,
the format's kind of the same, yeah, and we're not heavily edited. We're collaboratively edited, so it's not like I'm just like running rogue. Like it's not like a blog. I'm definitely edited and fact checked, and like I can't just make stuff up. So it's not a blog, but it's not quite a column.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. It's like a vetted
Yes.
blog.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how we're doing on time. Do we have time for some questions? Yes. So, any questions for Xochitl?
Jill.
Hi.
Because I've known you before and now. How have you made sense of this happening in your life?
Oh, it's so crazy, right?
Yeah.
No, I know. Like, I think we had my going away party at Hunter, like, in the summer of 2019. Yes. By the way, that Zabar's coffee mug, somebody in Iowa broke it, and they but they somehow knew that it was so important that they replaced it before like a replacement came right away. Yes. I think that I'd always kind of wanted to do this, and it's like that power of finally allowing yourself to do something. And I've said this before, but like I totally had very supportive grandparents, but like it was not the kind of house where like we'd go to the library, but nobody ever was like, you could write a book one day. Like that was not said. That was not said. Like it was like, yeah, get out a book. Like, and so take out a book and take it home and read it. And I think that it took me a long time to sort of be like, I could do that. Like, I think I could do that. And so I think because it was sort of a long time coming, and also being a little older, like I think you're just a little bit more like direct. But yeah, it's been a wild couple of years.
Hi. Oh, sorry. First of all, I'm obsessed with the book. And my question is, what advice would you give to Latinas that are thinking about starting writing?
Just write. Like, even if it's a scrap of a story, like your brain works in such weird ways. Like you could write like a page of a story and you don't know where to go with it, and it sits, and then like you start something else and it sits, and then like a month later you might go back and realize that your brain was doing something. Like I wrote this essay. I did take a writing class, like a free writing class downtown somewhere, like maybe 5 years before I did this. And when I was moving into Iowa, I found a notebook that from when I took the class, and verbatim, it was the opening of an essay that I then won a prize for, like in 2019. Like, and I wrote that in a free write in 2014. So like your brain is really weird, but if you're not putting it down, like, and you can put it down. I wrote giant passages of the book on the Q train on my way to and from work, like on my notes app. Like I still have them. It's like, and it's not perfect, but like you're not writing necessarily just even when you're at your desk. Just like keep the ideas going, because, and a book is composed very slowly. Like, like it's like a chunk of words at a time. So you don't have to know exactly where it's going when you start it. Sometimes people finish and they still don't know where it's going. So, but it's just like keeping at it and having some kind of a practice. You know what I mean? It might be like on your way to somewhere, you're gonna write sentences while you're on the subway or something. But like it's just the commitment to kind of doing it. Yeah. But it's good that you're thinking about it and just do it. And it'll get better. And then if you can, take a class, take a workshop. But like the main thing is to just get it going. And don't feel like, sorry, one more thing. It's like, don't feel like intimidated. You know what I mean? Like I think I remember going to Bread Loaf. Like that was the first thing I did. Actually, I think I got here and I was like, I have to take a week off to go to Bread Loaf. Like, and I got there and I was like, I just sort of, again, because you're a little older, I was like, I'm not going to be intimidated by this. Like they let me in. I'm going to let them look at my work, and I'm going to just get advice, and get advice and get it to be better. And then, I think when you don't go in assuming that it's going to be bad or you're not as good as everybody else, like, you'll be surprised at how much you can get out of it when you let go of that fear and you open your brain up to that other stuff. Yeah. Oh, I see a hand.
Hi, I'm just curious if you could speak a little bit about graduate school and what role an M.F.A. played in doing this book and coming to it, because it sounds like you had the sort of germ of the book before going and then worked on it there, and you talked about a class you took there on sci-fi. So I'm just curious how the program.
Yeah, no, I think that's a.
Well, I'm the director of the creative writing program at Hunter.
I think that's right. Oh no, then I was going to. I will say that's. Yes, so nice to meet you. Yeah, I think I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day. I think, and one of my classmates, I think, is here. Hi, Jeff. I think what was great about the M.F.A., and particularly a funded M.F.A., is that, which I mostly advocate for, is the M.F.A. is, for better or for worse, like a shortcut for the publishing industry. And I think that because it's just sheer volume, it's a quality stamp and it's sheer volume, and you're like, well, this will be probably better than me wading through these 20 other things that are random. And so what it did was, the number one thing it did was it gave me time. Like, I was able to get off the hamster wheel of adulting for a little while, and that was really great. And I was like by myself, and like for me, I think I had such an established life in Iowa, that in New York, that it was a benefit to get out of it and just be in isolation around mainly 26-year-olds. Like, so like, I was kind of like, I'm just gonna hang out with my imaginary friends. But like, I think that mainly it's the time, it's the discipline, it's the chance to sort of just focus on your craft and your art until you can like figure out who it is that you are that way. Definitely, like, if I hadn't done the M.F.A., I think writing a second book would be harder, because like, it's like, you're like, okay, like, this is part of the process, and now I know draft can be messy, revision can be like better. But mainly, I think it helped in terms of this particular journey, because it was like I remember worrying if I should do it, because I had to give up a rent-stabilized apartment, and I was like, and one of my best friends is like, it's going to take you twice as long to get here the other way. And I think that it just sort of helps, like, it helps you polish your own self, but I think it also helps you sort of cut through the chaos of publishing and publishing submissions and finding an agent and getting an agent that believes in your work and getting off. There's lots of piles, right? There's the publisher pile, there's the pile once you go on, there's the agent pile, there's the publisher pile once you go on submission, and I think that just it helps you cut to the front of the line of those piles and hopefully get the kind of team together that will help you cut through the other lines. Yeah. So it's sort of, I think, the time and also just the professional validation that it sort of gives. Yeah, I mean, totally, like, definitely. Like, there are definitely parts, like, I'm a really different person as a writer than I was as, like, a professional person. Like, if I'm, like, doing something very dark, I don't want to leave the house. Like, and I won't want to take phone calls, and I actually literally remember there's one scene, and I was working on it for like 3 days, and it was very, very dark, and a friend and I was in Iowa, and she was like, do you want to go and get a drink? And I was like crying, and I was like, you should probably go and get the drink. Like, I was going to say no and like stay in that. Like, so I do think, I don't know, I've had this fight with people at my M.F.A. program. Like, I think the art of it is the rawness and the honesty. Do you know what I mean? Like, that to me, like, that's what to me is like cutting to the chase, and I think even on revision, I went down to Puerto Rico for revision, and I was like by myself for like 10 days or whatever, and it's like dark 10 days, kind of like it's like you're really like getting there and being like, this is a lie, and that's not really how you feel, and like this is a lie, and that's not how he would really feel, and like really getting. I think again, I can't believe I'm quoting Toni Morrison twice in one sitting, but that's probably normal for an Iowa conversation. But like she says, the point of a novel is to get the character to a point of compression where they have to either confront or ignore their like loathing or self hatred, like or self and insecurities. And so I think when you think about it that way, you're forced to confront truth and lies. And so yeah, it's pretty like it can be yucky. I don't know. It can be yucky, but then hopefully the product is good. I think the harder thing is like how do you keep it light also, light enough to like keep people going. Yeah.
Thank you. I've been in your DMs. I absolutely love this book. My mom is actually on Zoom, so hi, Mom.
Hi.
Well, I'm third generation Puerto Rican, and I'm curious, and also just from all the people here, how would you recommend that people who, like me, have been, gentrified and whitewashed after all these years, reconnect and connect with the Puerto Rican culture and history here? Because as you mentioned, we're not taught it. But like, I really want to connect and reconnect with like my roots, but like, where do you suggest people begin?
Oh, I want Yarimar to weigh in on this. Like, that's like, yeah. I'm like, I wrote a book. Like, like she's done many things. Like, yes.
Well, first thing, obviously, to sign up to receive announcements from the Center for Puerto Rican Studies at Hunter College. To come to all of our events and webinars, etc. But I think also, there's a lot of cultural institutions, some of which you talk about in the book, right?
Yeah.
¿Cómo se llama? The social club,
Oh, so yes, yeah. It's
social
Tonitas,
club.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I think also just reading, engaging with popular culture as
Yeah.
well, and not thinking that to engage with Puerto Rican history and tradition requires you to read dense academic texts. It can also be engaging with Bad Bunny lyrics, or and seeing there's a lot of new film that's coming out from Puerto Rico. Perfume de Gardenias is one that I can strongly recommend. We hope to bring it to Hunter College at some point, and to just kind of go with what speaks to you. I think that a lot of folks who and to also not feel bad about where you sit in relationship to Puerto Rico, because like I said, I feel like nobody feels like they're authentically Puerto Rican. Like even people who grew up on the island their whole lives are like, oh, well, but I went to private school, or I did, I don't live in San Juan, or I live in San Juan. That makes me inauthentic, I think there's no real singular way of being Puerto Rican, and rather it's about having a connection to that place and whatever that means to you.
Yeah, I'll say like, I definitely, yes to all of it. I also like, for me, just like getting better at cooking, like in recipes, like has made me feel much, I don't know, like food is such a big part of culture and our culture. And I just think like feeling self-capable in that way, like has been very soothing for me. And then similarly, like, I don't know, like I went with this book club to Barrio BX in the Bronx, and that was Puerto Rican AF. Like it was like we had a great time. Like and I think like immersing yourself in some spaces is just like great. Like it's like because you realize what it is. Like you realize like there's way more similarity than like you're like I feel very at home here. Like there's no like there's no competition in these like when we're having a good time. So yeah. These are good questions. Oh yeah, totally. It's because it's in the news. Aubrey Plaza plays Olga, and Jesse Williams plays Mateo. For people that know, and Ramon Rodriguez plays Prieto, and Laz Alonso plays Reggie, and Wanda de Jesus is Blanca.
I need to see this like right now.
I know.
Right now.
This is amazing. Oh right! Oh my gosh! Yes, Dylan McDermott plays Dick. And actually, the best compliment ever was that he had read the book before he showed up to shoot, and he was like, "You really nailed middle-aged white guys." Like I was like, yeah. Oh my gosh, this is great. Yeah. She said that it was a very well written book and that she loves the mother.
Any more I think we have time for one final question or comment. Don't be shy. Well, yes.
I just want to say that it's so wonderful to be back at Hunter.
Yay.
This is such a special time in my life. I worked with the most wonderful people. I was so supported, and this is very beautiful to me. So, like, yes, really, truly, it's like beautiful to be here with you, and just that this is my first like New York real live event is perfect. It's perfect. So, thank you.